Here are some hidden details that you might have missed in League of Legends' new Bite Marks cinematic. Obviously, the cinematic builds off of where we left Arcane, building on certain themes and narratives from the show. One such theme is that in the first shot of the cinematic, we can see some continuity from Arcane, as Mage's eyes, like LeBlanc's, seem to have brighter, more pronounced colors, unlike a character like Darius.
To answer one simple question, are you strong enough?
LeBlanc's narration revolves around Mel and her arrival in Noxus. Her sigils throughout the episode are there to symbolize different characters in the cinematic. This wolf that we see represents Mel Medada, as she was pronounced the wolf by her mother. It also has the Medada star on its forehead, which makes this more blatantly obvious. Before we even see LeBlanc, we know it's her because her fingertips are blacked out. We discussed this in one of my previous videos about Arcane, but basically you can always tell it's her based on her hands alone. The cinematic shows us why her hands are like this. It probably has to do with the sigils that she casts. Mel lands on the shores of Rockrund, which is her mother's hometown. This is the exact same location where Mbessa's cinematic ends, drawing a parallel between the mother and daughter. This sigil represents Katarina and somewhat resembles her daggers. The masks and the robes in this theme are somewhat a stylistic and thematic reference to Stanley Kubrick's Eyes Wide Shut. This was famously the last film he put out before he tragically passed away. The double-sided axe sigil represents Darius, who leads his battalion into battle in this part of the story. However, it doesn't seem like Darius is the hand of Noxus yet. In fact, bro, he looks like he skipped leg day. My boy looks famished. We are led to believe that this is the present timeline since LeBlanc uses the sigil as a reference to him. The rotational dance and Katarina having to spin around this room is a reference to her abilities in League of Legends, where most of her kit revolves around, well, her revolving around. This multi-faced feminine mask is a great way to further emphasize this. Now, some people are saying that this is Jinn. And while I don't agree with this at all, it's worth pointing out that every time we see a mask in Arcane or any League-related content, people are screaming Jinn. So Riot Games should probably give him more love because it's quite clear that people want him to show up. LeBlanc reveals Elisa's sigil around Katarina's sigil as somewhat an indicator that this job that Katarina was on is a trap to eliminate her. Speaking about Elise, the number 8 pops up quite a bit in this Black Rose mask scene. The room is built in an octagon, and the rose in the center has 8 petals. Elisa's mask implies that she has 8 eyes, with 2 of the eye slots open when she is in human form. Elise in human form also of course has 8 legs. She has it in spider form as well. Another thing she has in spider form is 8 eyes. So there's a lot of emphasis being put on that particular number with relation to Elise. Some genius on Twitter managed to notice that Trundle actually steals away Darius's armor, which is his ultimate ability in game. Even the ratio of the armor he takes is approximately 40%, which is the ratio in game. This is one of the more crazy things that they did with the cinematic if it's intentional, which I suspect it is. A Reddit user noticed that this shot looks a lot like Arrow the Tracker from Legends of Runeterra, which would imply or at least reference Riven. However, this creature on the wall does look more like a stallion or a horse to me. But it is a nice shout considering what we see later on in the cinematic. In this shot, this ram's head seems to be placed to stand out. It slightly resembles Darius's axe and sigil motif. It is shown again here zoomed in the next shot, with Mel's hand magically reacting to it to emphasize its importance. Katarina's mark for assassination also has LeBlanc's sigils tattooed on him. What this means, however, is anyone's guess. We can see that by the end of her fight with Elise, she does manage to off him with gold coins scattering across the screen. Maybe that's why she did it. Later in the cinematic, Mel fights against these enemies who resemble the Grey Legion from Legends of Runeterra. Basically, the Grey Legion is led by this woman named Lady Faris Naradi, and they are a battalion which uses hemomancy to revive their dead allies as zombie-like forces. with hemomancy becoming a bigger deal in the story, obviously with the reveal of Vladimir later in the cinematic, and because of the fact that Lady Ferris and her daughter Ophelia are Black Rose members, we can see this because of the sigil she wears in this art. We can assume that we'll be seeing all of these characters tied to Mel later on in the story, and that we'll see the Grey Legion again in some form. How they'll deal with Mel though is anyone's guess, as she happens to be a counter mage and the hemomancy doesn't seem to work on her. Darius breaks his axe in his battle with Trundle, and one of his hands are frozen. I wonder if this is the reason why he is called the Hand of Noxus, representing a man who fought the King of Trolls and won. Another interesting catch is that much like in Arcane, Darius's forces watch him fight, much like Mbessa's forces did. This seems to be a Noxian custom, or rather a custom that we see throughout the world of Runeterra in different traditions, which maybe favor battle and honor when they engage in combat. This also seems to be a way to not lose all of your troops in battle, as you might only end up losing one general who happens to be the leader. It's worth mentioning now that Mel's journey to the Immortal Bastion seems more like fate, as it was something that was hinted at in her old paintings. Mel's visions also show her destroying buildings and monuments, which makes the gold paint splashed over the Immortal Bastion mean a lot more right now.
Lead us closer to chaos. Perhaps we should focus on the opportunity that's washed up on our shores.
This opportunity that Vladimir is referencing is obviously the wolf Mel Medada. He might view her as somewhat a threat, as he does say this in a little bit of a sarcastic tone and seems to fret about this. In contrast to his demeanor, LeBlanc doesn't seem fazed by the arrival of Mel Medada. In fact, she seems to embrace it. She then shows the last sigil of the cinematic. This one is a big one and had everyone guessing. It seems to be a sword or a dagger with an eye on it. It instantly reminded me of that. There are two possible scenarios. One is that recovering Riven's blade has now become top priority to LeBlanc. Mind you, she is the one who forged Riven's blade in the first place and has been looking to recover it anyway. The other, more likely possibility is that this is a reference to the Darkin, which do tend to take the form of a weapon with an eye on it. Specifically, this could be a reference to Neferi and her dagger. One more thing about this sigil which I found personally cool is that it does resemble Malekith's black blade from Elden Ring quite a lot, and that made it a bit more special to me personally. And that is everything you might have missed in Welcome to Noxus Bite Marks, which happens to be League of Legends' new cinematic. Let me know what hidden details I missed in the comments. This is Lois signing off.